This American school was whites only until 2001, and no one talks about it. Scope News investigates. The chandeliers shimmered above white tuxedos and pastel gowns as the DJ played the next track. Inside the gymnasium, students laughed, posed for pictures, and moved in rhythm beneath a sky of string lights. It was prom night, sacred, teenage Americana. But outside that gym, on that same spring night in 2001, just a few blocks away, black students gathered for their own dance. Same school, same year, but not the same prom. This wasn't Mississippi in the 1960s, it was Wilcox County, Georgia in 2001. More than 40 years after the Supreme Court ruled school segregation unconstitutional, some towns had simply found new ways to keep the old world alive. Prom, the great teenage rite of passage, became the final battlefield for a war many believed had ended. In towns like Rochelle, Georgia, the unwritten rules of the Jim Crow South quietly endured. White students over here, black students over there. No violence, no signs, just traditions no one dared question. But that silence, the silence that preserves segregation, is the same silence that shrouds death. In Valdosta, Georgia, just 2 hours south of Wilcox County, 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was found dead inside a rolled-up wrestling mat at Lowndes High School in 2013. His face was swollen. His organs were missing. Officials called it an accident, but his parents called it what it looked like, a cover-up. And to this day, more than a decade later, no one has been held accountable. Because when it comes to black children in the South, whether they're dancing at a separate prom or dying in a school gymnasium, there is always someone willing to look the other way. Wilcox County, the prom that time forgot. For years, Wilcox County High School held racially segregated proms, one organized by white parents, the other by black families. They weren't school-sponsored, which gave administrators an excuse to stay silent. But everyone knew the truth. The separation was deliberate. In 2013, students like Mareshia Rucker decided to change that. With courage and defiance, they organized the school's first integrated prom, facing backlash from their own community, including white parents who continued hosting their own separate but equal event the same weekend. When reporters arrived, some locals refused to comment. Others outright defended the tradition. But a few brave parents spoke out, risking social alienation to support their children's right to dance together. "It's 2013, one mother said at the time. Why are we still doing this?" The answer? Because in towns like Wilcox County, silence was more comfortable than change. The 1970s, when America chose delay over justice. The story of segregation didn't end with Brown versus Board of Education. In the 1970s, federal courts demanded real integration, and school districts across the South scrambled to comply on paper while resisting in practice. Instead of integrating, many communities retreated. Rather than enroll their white children in integrated public schools, thousands of white parents pulled them out and formed new institutions, ones designed specifically to keep black children out. They called them private schools, but we know them today as segregation academies. These weren't small or subtle. In cities like Jackson, Birmingham, and Macon, they were established with the explicit purpose of avoiding federal desegregation orders. They were often started in church basements, with donated textbooks and bare-bones curriculums, but parents didn't care. What mattered was that their children wouldn't be sitting next to black classmates. Macon, Georgia, a majority black city with a white school on the hill. Nowhere is the legacy of those academies more obvious than in Macon, Georgia. In 1969, the same year courts began enforcing school integration, Tatnall Square Academy opened its doors. 55 years later, Macon is a majority black city, but Tatnall remains nearly all white. Black families in Macon know what the school was built for, and while Tatnall no longer explicitly bans black students, the unwritten codes remain. The price of admission is not just tuition, it's assimilation. Zoe Johnson, a mother of two, spoke candidly in a 2024 interview about the dilemma. You either send your child to a place that doesn't really want them, or to a public school that's been stripped of everything it needs to succeed. That's not a choice. That's a trap. North Carolina. busing, then backlash. In cities like Charlotte and Winston-Salem, North Carolina, busing policies in the 1970s brought hope that integration might finally become reality. Black children were bused into white neighborhoods, and for a while it worked. Charlotte was praised nationally as a success story. But white flight soon followed. Suburban development exploded as white families fled integrated districts. Then came the lawsuits, the cost, the exhaustion. By the 1990s, districts were dismantling busing programs. Integration quietly unraveled. Marcus C., who was bused from East Winston-Salem to a majority white school, remembered the isolation. They looked at us like we were invading. Teachers, students, even the bus drivers. Today, the resegregation is so complete that many North Carolina districts are more racially divided now than they were in the 1980s. Kendrick Johnson, the body in the mat. Then there's Kendrick Johnson, a student, an athlete, a son. He walked into Lowndes High School on January 10, 2013, and never came out alive. When his body was discovered inside a rolled-up gym mat, authorities claimed he'd fallen in while reaching for a shoe. Case closed. But everything about the scene said otherwise. His organs were missing. His face was battered. Surveillance footage had been mysteriously deleted. A second autopsy, paid for by his family, found evidence of blunt force trauma. And still, no arrests, no charges, no accountability. Kendrick's parents believe he was murdered and covered up. They're not alone. Civil rights activists, journalists, and national legal experts have all pointed to glaring inconsistencies in the case. But in a county where silence protects power, justice remains just out of reach. And so we pretend. America loves its narrative of progress. The marches, the speeches, the triumphs. But it hates the truth. That racism didn't end. It adapted. It hid in PTA meetings and private school brochures. It wrapped itself in school choice and parental rights. In places like Wilcox County, Macon, and Valdosta, the ghosts of segregation haven't gone. They've simply changed clothes. We pretend not to see the all-white private schools in black cities. We pretend separate proms were just tradition. We pretend Kendrick Johnson's death was an accident. But pretending won't bring justice. Only truth can do that. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Special thanks to these sources for helping uncover the uncomfortable reality. Coverage of Wilcox County's segregated prom and Maresha Rucker's leadership was documented through CNN, NBC, and Georgia-based news investigations. The founding of Tatnall Square Academy and other segregation academies in the 1970s was examined through Southern Education Foundation records and historical archives. Zoe Johnson's testimony about racial imbalance in Macon private schools was captured in 2024, reporting from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Marcus C.'s busing experience was taken from oral histories archived by the North Carolina Humanities Council. Kendrick Johnson's death has been the subject of national scrutiny, covered by CNN, The Guardian, the Finding Kendrick Johnson documentary, and independent forensic investigations obtained by his family. Legal disclaimer. This report is intended for educational, investigative, and informational purposes. It contains material related to racial injustice, historical segregation, and unresolved deaths. Viewer discretion is advised.